So the next task is to make the right paddle move down when the down key is pressed. And what you guys should have at the moment is your left paddle here with a certain amount of space between the edge of the screen and the paddle. And you have the right paddle on the right side of the screen with the same amount of space between the paddle and the edge of the screen. And so the left paddle moves according to W, but then the right paddle does not, right? So then how are we going to do that? Well, in your code, it should be clear that you need to have two sets of variables, one that describes the left paddle and one set that describes the right paddle. And the reason for that is because they're independent and they will be moving differently. If we just had one set of variables, then if we pressed up, both paddles would move up, and when we press down, both paddles would move down, and that's not what we want. So okay, so then what we need to do is come into our for loop, and I guess this would be a good time to comment up our code. And so this portion here is the logic that describes the keystrokes. So I'm going to put here keystrokes. And then here is the logic that describes the motion of the paddles. So let's put here motion of the paddles. And then down here we are placing onto the screen, right? So we put here place sprites onto the screen. And then we know that this last little bit of code here is to place the screen onto the monitor. But I'm not going to put that in my notes. And so how do we make the right paddle move down? Well, we need to add to this keystroke logic, right? And so if the event type is equal to key down, then we need to check if, and I'm going to put a space here because this here should be the logic of the different keystrokes for the left paddle. And then this here should be another piece of logic that describes or checks for the keystrokes corresponding with the right paddle. So I'm going to put here if event key is equal to pygame dot I think it's k down. Let's see, is it? Yes, k down. So I'm going to put here k underscore down. And if that's true, then what do I want to do? I want to basically do the same thing, except I want this to be false and this to be true. And I want this to be PR because that's the variable that I used to describe whether it should be moving up or down. Okay, so I have the right variables equal to false and true. And now that means I need to update the position of the right paddle based on these two variables. So I'm going to come down here to the motion of the paddles, and I'm going to say if PR, the right paddles down, is true, right? If that's true, then the PR underscore Y is going to be plus equaled by P underscore speed. So the right paddle's Y position is going to be increased from 300 to 305. And that means when I place it on the screen and I blit him right here, he is going to be further down on the screen. So let's go ahead and test that out and see how it goes. So I press the W key and he moves up. I press the down key and he moves down. You'll notice here I press the up key once and he continues to move up. I press the down key once and he continues to move down. And so that's a problem. So the way that we're going to fix that is you can check if the event type is key down, and you could also check if the event type is key up. Okay, and that's what we're going to do right here. So let's come over here and say elif event.type is equal to pygame.key up. And if that's the case, and if that key is this same key, right? If it's a W key that was released, basically what this is saying is if the key on the event was a release of a keystroke, then this is going to be true. So if I let go of the W key, this is going to be true. And if the key that was released is the W key, then this is going to be true. So what do I want to do then? I want to make this guy equal to false, right? Why would you want to set this to false? So that the paddle stops moving upward, because once it finishes this for loop, it's going to come here, and if this is true, then we're going to continue to move the paddle upward, and we don't want that to happen if they release. So if they release the W key, stop that upward motion, and stop the downward motion too if he's moving down. So we're going to do the same thing here for key down. No, I'm sorry, that's not right. Yeah, key down. Yeah, so if the key down key was released, then we are going to make this variable false, which will stop the downward motion. So we go ahead and do that. I hold down the W key, I let go, it stops. I hold down the down key, I let go, and he stops. And the reason for that is because of this addition to the branch statement, right? So we're not only checking if the key was pressed down, we're also checking if the key was released. And then after it's released, we're checking which key was released. And if it was the W key, then we're going to set these guys to false. If it was the down key, we're going to set these guys to false, which will stop his motion, because this is going to be equal to false, which means this does not happen, and the blit is blitted to the same location, right? So the paddle's ceasing his motion. And yeah, I think that's about it. And so you got to add to this this logic here, so that you can also account for the S key to move down, and you also need to add to this logic here to account for the up key, so that the right paddle can move up. And then once you do that, then you need to add to this logic here, so that these variables affect the motion of these different paddles, right? So I hope that makes sense. If not, just come and see me and I'll clear it up.